Welcome to the Salt Sanctuary at Citrine in Larkspur, California. My name is Ernie Hubbard, and I've been studying human vitality for 25 years, and I've been very interested in the energy of the human biofield. And I've had the privilege of working with the fine people here at Citrine to evaluate this amazing salt sanctuary for its properties to promote human health and wellness. After studying the salt room for a number of months and making certain modifications in it, I'm now prepared to share with you as wellness practitioners some of the aspects of this salt sanctuary and how you might use it in helping your clients and patients to achieve optimal wellness.
Well, greetings. It's Ernie here, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes sharing with you as fellow practitioners at Citrine a little bit about the salt sanctuary and what it might mean for you as a practitioner and how you might optimize its use, both to enhance your own practice and to help those you serve. This video is a companion to a manual that I have produced about the salt sanctuary, and it's basically a mirror image of it. But if you would like the written manual, please contact me and I'll send you the PDF. And there's also a video on my website, erniehubbard.com. If you go to the biofield page, I have about a 12.5-minute video that describes the biofield, and that's also a companion to this video because it describes in some detail what my understanding of the human biofield is, and of course it complements then the work that I have been doing to optimize the energetic field in the salt sanctuary. If you have been in practice in one or more wellness modalities for any length of time, it is obvious that the space in which you see your clients and patients is a unique energy field in and of itself. And I think in my own case, much of my focus over the years has been upon the human energy interaction and not necessarily so much taking full consideration of the energetic consequences of what kind of space I'm working in. And over the years, as I've started measuring the energy of spaces in various clinics and wellness settings, etc., I have noticed a wide range of variation in the energy in a given space. So one of the objectives of this video is to inform you what I have learned about the unique aspects of the Citrine Salt Sanctuary as a space in which you might practice and how it might differ from other spaces in which you might practice, be they at Citrine or elsewhere. If you've had a chance to watch my 12.5-minute video on the biofield, I have a section in there that describes the fact that energy is a single word, but it really is kind of like saying that someone is an American. It has a very broad definition, and there are many subsets of energy that exist within that term. And I think it's important for us to realize at the outset that no matter where we are working with our clients or patients, we are working in a space that has a wide variety of different forms of energy, all moving very dynamically through the space, through our bodies, and through our energy fields. Some of the types of energy that we encounter in our practice space include electromagnetic energy, electrical energy in terms of currents and voltages, quantum mechanical energy, gravitational fields and energy, geomagnetic energy, the harmonics that occur when objects move or when sounds are generated, Obviously, light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it, of course, has its own unique energetic implications because we can visibly see it, unlike many other forms of electromagnetic radiation. The time-space continuum and the effect of gravity and time on the session that we're in with our clients or patients, that is in and of itself a form of energy, and it is a dynamic element in considering the energy in the space. A physical vibration is a form of energy, and many of you who work with crystals may be aware of the fact that covalent crystals, such as mineral crystals, have unique vibrational properties when they are impinged upon by physical vibrations. And of course, sound is a form of energy in terms of the effect that it has upon the vibration of various objects, molecules, and other energy fields it encounters. So I guess one of my main introductory points is that the space in which we work as practitioners is fairly complex energetically. And the more we know about it, and the more we are aware of it, and the more we honor it, the more effective we can be as practitioners, because energy can affect our practice in a wide variety of ways, whether it's quote-unquote optimized or not. In an optimized sense, the energy of our practice space can enhance the services that we're offering or the treatments that we're offering to our clients and patients. It can resonate with them, and it can harmonize with their own frequencies of energy and with their own deep needs of health and wellness. So these complex forms of energy can affect the experience we have with our clients or patients in a wide variety of ways. And that's one of the reasons that I feel it's very important to make sure that we're working in an optimal energetic environment to have optimal outcomes. For example, if we have optimized the energy in which we're seeing our clients and our patients, we have a much higher probability of augmenting and enhancing our practice as it is offered to our patients and clients. So it has a form of enhancement and amplification, as opposed to being in discord or in interference. So with this wide spectrum of types of energy in our practice space, it's all the more important that we are aware of the need to optimize the energy in the space where we're working with our clients and patients. And if we accomplish that optimization, we can enhance the overall experience that our patients and clients have with us. And we can resonate with them more efficiently and more effectively. We can harmonize with them and develop the kinds of communications with them and with their own energy fields that will promote their health and wellness. And this is as opposed to working in an energy space that is not optimized, which can lead sometimes to interference, energetic interference, or discord, or chaotic amplifications that occur when energy is not aligned. So one of the purposes of this video is really to emphasize the importance of this space, and specifically to focus on the Citrine Salt Sanctuary as a space that for a number of months now I have been working to optimize for its use as an energetic space for healing and wellness. In addition to energy as an element in the practice experience, given a certain space, I think it's also important to be aware of the fact that energy in many forms is the medium through which information is transmitted and received. And a typical example of that would be a radio wave, for example. And it is through the electromagnetic waves and the radio frequencies that we are able to receive messages and listen to music on the radio or get the news, for example. But there are many other types of information that can be transmitted in an optimized energetic space. And by way of contrast, that same type of information can be interfered with if the energy space isn't optimized. So that's yet another reason to want to make sure that the energy in which we are working with a client or patient is optimized, not only so that our conscious transmission of information can be received and sent, but so that any other levels of information, ranging from very primal information all the way to the highest spiritual levels of information, can be most efficiently transmitted and received. Because after all, as bioenergetic beings, we are transceivers. We both send and receive information. And it's been my experience in the Citrine Salt Sanctuary that the more optimized the energy of that space has become, the more clear and subtle the nature of the information is that is being transmitted and received. So I want to spend a little bit of time in this video talking to you about the Citrine Salt Sanctuary and the way that we have been working to optimize it for the human biofield. I'm going to provide you with some background information in order to focus on the sanctuary. So I'm going to be covering a number of topics in this video, some of which are by way of background, and then more specifically toward the end of the video I'll be talking about the salt sanctuary itself. But I want to begin by talking about crystals in general, and more specifically as they relate to Himalayan salt crystals in particular. But I'll be covering a few topics about crystals, and I'm interested in your thoughts about this, and perhaps you can help me learn some things about it too. I then want to focus in on the Himalayan salt crystal, its primary structure, and then how it is structured as it formed geologically about 600 million years ago, and incorporated various metals and minerals in the salts, and what those properties actually mean to us as practitioners as we work with our clients and patients in the salt sanctuary. I want to take you for a little tour and a look and a review of the work that I've done in the salt sanctuary to reduce interfering energy systems in there and to enhance those that are more aligned with the human biofield. And then I'd like to list out for you a number of different modalities which you as practitioners might consider using in the salt sanctuary. The list is by no means complete, but it represents my initial thoughts about different types of services that might be offered in the salt sanctuary with its optimized energy space. And then I actually am giving you, toward the end of this video, I'm going to give you in a slide what I call the biofield dashboard of the salt sanctuary. And this is simply a list of the things that you can control in the salt sanctuary before and during your session with a client or patient. And there are just a few things that are easily adjusted and over which you have a considerable degree of control. And I think it's important for each of you as practitioners to know that these controls exist and that you can use them. They're all very simple and straightforward, and they can have profound effects upon the experience in the salt room. And then I conclude this just by giving you my contact information in case you have other questions or can think of ways to improve upon this video. So let's jump right in. And let's talk a little bit about crystals, which, as I said, are at the heart of the energy field in the salt sanctuary because it's basically encompassed almost on all four sides by Himalayan salt bricks. And as it turns out, these salt bricks and the crystals that comprise them have a number of very unique properties. But let's just start by looking at crystals and what they are and what the definition of a crystal is. In my conversations with people, I've observed that a number of people have different definitions about what a crystal is. And in terms of the pure scientific definition of a crystal, first of all, it's a solid substance. It's not a liquid and it's not a gas. And its atomic and molecular structure involves repeating units. So those are the two fundamental elements of a crystal. It's a solid that has repeating units to it. And that doesn't mean that it's simply a mineral. And it doesn't mean that it's simply a covalently bonded mineral like a quartz crystal, for example. And bonding happens to be a very important attribute of crystals in terms of how they respond energetically. Because there are three basic types of bonds that will hold a crystal into its solid state. And the first of those, and the strongest, is called covalent bonding, and that's what diamonds and quartz and amethyst are. They're covalently bonded, which means that the nuclei of the crystal is actually sharing electrons with other nuclei. And so it's like they're holding hands really tightly, and that's why they're so strong. And that's another reason that if you put a quartz crystal in water, it doesn't just dissolve and melt into the water as a salt crystal would. Because salt crystals are largely made with what are called ionic bonds. And ionic bonds differ from covalent bonds in a very important way, and it is that they don't share electrons so much as that they occur near each other. The nuclei of the atoms are attracted to each other because of the positive and negative charges. For example, in table salt, it would be sodium and chlorine, and the negative charge of the chlorine is attracted to the positive charge of the sodium. And so instead of holding hands tightly, it's more like they're just touching each other, and they can readily be separated. And that proves to be a very interesting energetic property about ionically bonded crystals, because they can exchange electrical information very rapidly and efficiently, unlike covalently bonded crystals, which tend to be more like insulators because the electrons are held so tightly. They don't release that energy. Now, covalent crystals have other properties that we can talk about, but in terms of the Himalayan salt room, the ionic bonds of the Himalayan salt crystals are a very important part of their energetic property. And it's very important to understand a little bit about why that's so. The third major type of bonding that can occur in crystals is the weakest bonding of all of the three, and it's called hydrogen bonding. And hydrogen bonding is really what happens in water. And it's what happens in our DNA. The hydrogen bonds between the various molecules in our DNA are what give it its double helical structure. And hydrogen bonds are very weak ionic bonds. And they occur sometimes at considerable distance. And they are very fragile, if you will. And that's why when you heat water, it can go into steam immediately, for example. And you can do the same with DNA. DNA can melt. If it's heated, the hydrogen bonds will release. They'll generate enough energy that they start vibrating away from each other and being attracted by other charges, such as water around the DNA, and they would release from the double helical structure. But as it turns out, many of our biological molecules are crystals. And I mentioned DNA being a crystal. Also, muscles have a crystalline structure, and skin has a crystalline structure. Our cell membranes are repeating units of fatty acids that have a crystalline or crystal-like structure. And many biological crystals are called aperiodic because they may not be exactly repeating all the time, like our DNA molecules don't have the exact same molecular order of all of the bases of the DNA, but they do repeat. And so they're called aperiodic crystals. The same with a cell membrane, for example. Cell membranes are interspersed with all sorts of membrane proteins that can interrupt that repeating nature, but the membrane itself is, in general, a repeating unit of fatty acids. And so it's kind of intriguing to think of you as a practitioner and your patient or client as being crystalline energetic beings that can interact with, for example, the energetic qualities of the citrine salt sanctuary. And these slides are showing different examples of different types of crystal. It's no wonder that over the millennia we have been so fascinated by crystals and their wonderful properties. I think another attribute about crystals that I want to share with you is that they appear to be self-organizing. And here's a slide that shows you three very different types of crystals. They're different in many respects, but on the left of this slide you can see the largest known crystals in the world. This is from a cave in Mexico, and these are pure quartz crystals. Some of them measured 30 feet in length and 6 feet in diameter. You can see in orange or red the humans that are crawling around these crystals. And these crystals were formed spontaneously many hundreds of millions of years ago. And as you can see, they have formed perfect geometric crystalline structures. In the upper right-hand corner, you see the actual spontaneous creation of a crystal that's occurring at many thousand-fold magnification in a glass pipette in a laboratory. And you can see the crystal actually forming as the atoms find each other electrically and recognize their location in the crystal. And then in the lower right corner is an example of a fairly complex crystal that's made up of all of the minerals that are in ocean water. And so you see a very delicate, though regular, crystal structure occurring here. And these, again, are ionic crystals that are formed from seawater. We talked a little earlier about the fact that the human biofield and the energy field of the space in which we see our clients and patients is not only an energetic field, but it is an information transmission and reception field. And it's fascinating to me that crystals, by definition and by their very structure, can transmit and receive not only energy, but also information. And perhaps the most common example of that is illustrated in the right-hand corner of this slide with a crystal, a quartz crystal in a radio. And this is just a photograph of the crystal that is in an old-fashioned radio. And that crystal will vibrate in response to various frequencies, and that frequency of that vibration can be transmitted from an electromagnetic signal in the atmosphere to an electrical signal that then goes to the speaker in your iPhone or your radio. In addition to having informational transmission properties, crystals also act as semiconductors. They can compartmentalize and direct energy and information to go in certain directions. Polarity and polarization are examples of that kind of direction that occur, for example, in a laser. You've heard of a ruby laser, maybe. Well, the ruby laser will take light that is being transmitted in all directions, and it will focus that in one specific direction to amplify it and to allow it to occur as a single beam of laser light. The matrices and the composition of crystals all determine their various informational properties, and that is a very rich area to explore in terms of the citrine salt sanctuary, and also it's well to be aware of it as you're working with your patients and your clients. I'd like to spend a few minutes just giving you the background about Himalayan salt and where it came from and what we know about it, how these bricks that are in the salt sanctuary at Citrine came into being. These bricks were mined at the Kira salt mine in Pakistan, in northeastern Pakistan. As I mentioned, it's the largest salt mine in the world. And these salt deposits came from an ancient sea that was in existence more than 500 million years ago. And for reasons that I'm not clear about, I'm not sure anybody else is, the accumulation of minerals in that particular part of the earth were very rich with a wide variety of minerals. So it was a salty sea. It wasn't a freshwater lake. And it was very rich in many of the metals and minerals that give rise to its beautiful pink, orange, apricot type color, and also which give rise to its energetic properties that I referred to earlier regarding its energetic and informational properties. But to my knowledge, this is the only place in the world where this particular type of salt exists, and it is becoming very popular around the world. And many people are creating Himalayan salt rooms in their businesses and clinics and homes. But I'm not sure how many of them understand just what a miraculous space they are creating. And that has been my focus over the last few months, is to really try to understand this beautiful room that Karen and Jay have brought to Larkspur and to us who work there. In terms of the crystal and structure of the Himalayan salt, I have been studying this for some time now, and these slides give you a little snapshot of some of the work that I've done in testing the conductivity, the electrical and energetic and electromagnetic conductivity of Himalayan salt. It's highly conductive. And it is uniquely structured such that if one were to take a single drop of Himalayan salt water and put it on a microscope slide, you can see what kind of crystals it forms. They form essentially perfect pyramids. And the pyramidal structure of the Himalayan salt crystal happens to be identical to the Great Pyramid of Corfu in Egypt in terms of its proportions. These proportions of both the salt crystal and the Pyramid of Corfu are actually equivalent to the golden mean ratio. And if you've studied the golden mean and sacred geometry, you'll know that that ratio is present in many natural objects and energy forms, and it often gives rise to objects and energy of great resonance and beauty and harmony. So it was with great delight that I found out not only that Himalayan salt crystals make pyramids, and that they make pyramids like the pyramids in Egypt, but that also they are self-forming according to the geometry of the golden mean ratio. And that slide in the upper right corner shows what happens when I shine a laser through a Himalayan salt brick, and you can see the way that the energy, the electromagnetic energy in the laser light is moving not in a straight line, but it's being directed in a variety of different directions. And so these bricks are very dynamically active, energetically, and by definition, informationally. So it's with great humility and respect that I am working in this sanctuary as I have come to understand a little bit about the richness and the complexity of the energetic properties and the potential to use these properties in my practice. And this is one of the reasons I want to share this video with you, in hopes that you'll be able to take advantage of these properties in your practices. One of the first things that I observed when I started measuring and doing tests on the energy in the salt sanctuary was that in its then current state, it was fairly active with a lot of energy that was coming in from the outside world, largely in the form of electromagnetic fields and electrical fields, two different types of electromagnetic and electric energy fields. So I set about to try to reduce to the extent feasible the outside energies that were influencing the space in the room. And in order to do that, I have installed electromagnetic shielding over the electronic devices in the room and the electrical outlets in the room. And I've tested to verify that that removed a great percentage of the electromagnetic energy that was previously in the room. And you'll notice if you go into the salt sanctuary in the far left-hand corner as you walk into the room, that there's a copper pipe in the corner. And that copper pipe is 12 feet long. And Jay and I installed it such that it is now about 5 feet down into the earth. And the pipe is hollow, of course, and it has a spear tip on the bottom, has a sharp pointed spear tip so that we could drive it into the soil. And that spear tip has holes drilled in it so that when I pour Himalayan salt water into the top of that pipe, it leaches out into the soil and forms a very solid electrolytic connection with the pipe. And that pipe is now connected by copper wire to the Himalayan salt bricks. So the bricks themselves are now grounded to the earth. And the room is now shielded from many electromagnetic frequencies that were previously causing interferences in the room. And I'm happy to chat more with you about this, and if you'd like to see some of the testing that I've done, I'm happy to show that to you. But it is now possible to attach a grounding strap, a wrist strap, for example, to the sides of the walls of the salt sanctuary or to the copper pipe, and you and your clients or patients can be literally grounded to the earth while you're in the salt sanctuary. The other two areas in which I did a little bit of energy work to basically try to clear out and reduce extraneous energy was that I have sealed the door of the salt room as best I have been able to reduce the sound and light that is coming in through the door. So you'll find when you close the door, if you press against it slightly, and there's a little doorstop in the basket under the table where you can actually tighten that door so that it's almost completely dark in there if you wanted to dial the lights off and then close the door. You would have very close to complete darkness in the room. And also the sound was considerably reduced when I added the weather stripping around the door. I'll make a note right now about the lights, since we were talking about the effect of lights and energy. As it turns out, the lights on all of the walls behind the salt bricks really represent a lot of light. I mean, if you were to take all of those little light bulbs and put them into one light bulb, it would be a very bright bulb. So there are a lot of photons coming into that room through the crystals when the lights are on high. And I don't mean to say that's necessarily a bad or a good thing, but it is an energetic reality that I've been able to measure. And some of you have been in the room while I've been showing you the measurements. But it turns out that that's one of the things on your dashboard that I'll show you toward the end of this video that you can control. And it's been very interesting to me as I've been working with people in the salt sanctuary to observe and experience myself the different effects of different levels of light. And I think it's fair to say that depending upon your objectives with your client or patient, you have a number of different options just by adjusting the light, the intensity of the light, And those of you who work with different colors, of course, may want to experiment with that as well. To summarize the current energy status of the salt sanctuary, looking at where it was previously and then what it is now. So as I mentioned, the walls, when I started working with the room, the walls were not grounded to the earth, and they are now, which means that you and your practitioners can also be grounded to the earth when you are practicing in there. The electrical outlets and the electronic instruments under the table have been shielded with very high quality electromagnetic shielding. And the lights, as I mentioned, can be varied one way or the other. And what you see on the right side of this slide are the baseline energy profiles of the room before I started the shielding and grounding work. And as you can see, on the right side of those graphs, you can see the reduction in EMFs, electrical fields, and general radio signals. So the room is much quieter and much cleaner now in terms of its energy. And just because I wanted to, I decided that I was going to take a hike up Madrone Canyon with my instruments and measure the field up at what I call the Miwok Rock, up about a half an hour up Madrone Canyon in the center of a group of redwood trees. And I have taken, for about an hour, I took readings on the field of energy in that beautiful sacred space. And then I went out to Rodeo Beach and did the same thing. And I plunked my instruments down into the salt water and into the air and measured the fields of both of those fairly natural environments. And I was very pleased when I came back to the salt sanctuary and retook my measurements there that, and I can say this with a certain degree of confidence, the Citrine Salt Sanctuary now has an energy field in it that is very active, but also equivalent to the energy that one would experience out at Rodeo Beach or far up into Madrone Canyon. So let's talk for a few minutes about what happens with energy fields as they come into and out of the Himalayan Salt Sanctuary at Citrine. And this diagram basically is a schematic that shows the salt sanctuary with a human being in it and their biofield being present in the presence of the energy field in the salt sanctuary. The green lines over on the lower left side are simply showing the grounding of the room and the salt bricks through the copper pipe that I described earlier. I think it's important to point out that when energy hits the outside of the salt bricks, in any form, whether it's sound, light, electromagnetism, a variety of different energy forms, that several things can happen to that energy before it gets inside the room. And the very first thing that can happen is that a lot of that energy will be deflected and go right into the ground because the walls and the bricks are now grounded. And that's very useful for a variety of reasons, but it certainly takes a great deal of the electromagnetic signals that were previously traveling right through the room, and it now directs them into the earth so that they don't interfere with what's happening in the room. Some of the energy is simply reflected off of the bricks, and you can imagine the lights that are shining behind the bricks. Some of that light is just reflecting off the crystals and going back toward the light itself. Some of it, though, is actually transmitted into the room. I mean, that's what we visibly see in the room, although it is filtered through the crystals. And the filtration that occurs in Himalayan salt crystals when energy passes through it is really fascinating, because the energy can be transmitted directly, it can be diffracted, it can even be polarized. And there's evidence that Himalayan salt crystals can polarize much as a laser polarizes light, like the ruby laser I referred to earlier. And it can direct and amplify the energy. So we have a very complex filter of clean energy that's occurring in the room. And as a consequence, the internal field of energy inside the salt sanctuary is now uniquely optimized for use with the human biofield in terms of its ability to be modified, to harmonize and resonate with the human biofield, with, for example, any of the chakra fields, and to be enhanced for various purposes. This is a slide that illustrates some of the tests that I have been conducting on the human biofield in the salt sanctuary during the first study that I conducted with 11 women from July until September of this year. And I simply show you these to give you some indication of the kind of testing that I've been doing, ranging from testing the brain biofield, the heart and nervous system biofield, and the biofield of the entire body, of a person's entire body. And the test that I conducted involved, with each of the 11 women, I ran a series of tests on them outside of the Citrine Salt Sanctuary. And then within 1 week, optimally, they would come back, and in the salt sanctuary, they would spend 15 minutes in meditation, choosing whatever light, dark, sound orientation they wanted to, and then I ran all of those same tests again on them. So I was asking a basic question: does there appear to be an effect of the salt room energy field on the human biofield? And I'm very pleased to report to you that the initial analysis of the results of that study indicate that there is very possibly a very positive effect upon the human biofield. And this slide indicates at the cellular level, when I was looking at the whole body biofield and all of the cells of the body and their total energy field, in the blue, for each of these women, the blue bars show what their cellular energy readings were outside the Citrine Salt Sanctuary, and the gold bars show what those same readings were inside the Salt Sanctuary. And a quick scan across all 11 women, who, by the way, ranged in age from 34 to 78 years old, a quick scan across there will illustrate that 9 out of 11 women showed an enhancement of their total cellular energy after only 15 minutes of meditation in the Citrine Salt Sanctuary, compared with that very same reading outside the Salt Sanctuary. And this next slide shows another measure of the cellular biofield, which isn't so much a measure of the total energy of the cells in the body biofield, but a measure of their efficiency with which they can transmit energy and information. And again, 9 out of 11 women showed improvements in this area. I have a lot more data that I'm analyzing and summarizing right now, and I'll be happy to share that with you as it's available. But I'd like to turn now and just look at a list of possible ways that you as practitioners might consider using the Citrine Salt Sanctuary. And this list started out with kind of what I would call the usual suspects. You know, in my view, it would be to use it for various modalities such as meditation, or perhaps somatic energy work involving yoga or qigong or tai chi, or even dance. Being involved in the use of crystal therapies in the salt room would be fascinating, for reasons I think are obvious now after we had a little discussion about crystals. Stress and anxiety reduction. I already know, because one of the tests that I ran in my study had to do with the heart biofield, which is also connected to the autonomic nervous system, which is the basis of our stress and relaxation. And I can tell you right now that there was a very high percentage of the women in the study whose stress and anxiety levels, as reflected in those measurements, was greatly reduced in the Salt Sanctuary. Some other possibilities of modalities would be the use of biofeedback, guided imagery, hypnotherapy, even counseling, just to have a dialogue or an exchange with someone in that energy space. Some of you may find that that's a very different experience than in another space. Various readings that some of you may do, whether it's astrological readings, for example, or energy assessments of one form or another. I mentioned some somatic energy work earlier, but there are also other somatic therapies, such as massage or EMDR or acupuncture. Cognitive and intuitive therapies, where the focus is on, for example, neurological balancing, or tapping into an intuitive region of the biofield that is in conversation, for example, with the outer cosmos. Various forms of diagnostics I'm finding are extremely sensitive in the Citrine Salt Sanctuary. And as some of you know, I'm working right now on developing an instrument to measure the energy fields of each of the chakras. The use of the Salt Sanctuary for creativity, for creative purposes, and for inspirational purposes might have great potential. I have been finding myself wondering what it would be like to just spend time in the Salt Sanctuary contemplating or even working on a book or a painting or a song or something else. It could be that the energetics of that space are opening up creative channels that may have been previously muffled, if you will, by interfering energies. And then finally, as you all, I hope, know, the halotherapy capacity of the Citrine Salt Sanctuary is yet another very substantive and powerful application through using the halo generator and increasing the ionic concentration in the atmosphere of the Salt Sanctuary. So with all of that in mind, here's the simple dashboard that you as practitioners might consider as you approach the possibility of working with your clients and patients. And the first is that the orientation of your client or patient can be modified in that room. And the room, fortunately, is oriented such that the door is on the south wall. And so when you walk into the room, you're facing virtually due north, with the east on your right and the west on your left. And I have a compass. I wouldn't encourage you to use the one on your iPhone. I'd use an old-fashioned geocompass. But when you go in there, you can basically use the four walls of the room to define north, south, east, and west, and adjust the table or the chairs accordingly for your session. Some other orientation aspects that you have access to are just simply the temporal or the time of your session, whether it's the time of day or the time of month or the time of year, whether it's the cycle of the moon. There are various astrological configurations that might energetically be of interest to you. And so that's one dimension that I would consider as you begin thinking about a session with someone in the Salt Sanctuary. A second control knob that you have, if you will, on your Salt Sanctuary dashboard is the ability to actually ground yourself and your clients to the earth while you're in the session. And this can be done very easily with wrist straps, or I have copper wands that can be held in the hands and they attach to either side of the walls of the sanctuary. And then ultimately you can actually just put your hands on the walls themselves and be grounded to the walls energetically that way. We talked a little bit about light as a variable in the salt room, and again, because of the rheostat on the switch, we can dial up to fairly high levels of light in that room, which generates a lot of electrical exchange and energetic exchange between the walls of the room. It can be dialed down to a very low level, which may have other applications. and which results in lower frequencies and amplitudes of energy. And then ultimately, of course, the light can be completely eliminated and the session can be held in darkness, which has its own unique properties. And the little bit of time that I've spent in that room in total darkness, I can tell you it's profoundly different than when the lights are on. So various frequencies of visible light might be of interest to you. Finally, sound in the room. Everything from silence with the door closed and sealed, be they percussive rhythms or other energetic rhythms of sound and sound vibrations. The use of music, whether it's instrumental, vocal, chanting, is a wide range of possibilities there. Sound at various frequencies that may relate to various frequencies of the biofield are of interest, and tuning forks would be an excellent example of that, where a specific frequency might be of use and value for a particular person with whom you're working at a particular time. And that can be, of course, coupled with touch sound therapy. And then binaural beats, of course, is another area where there are great opportunities. And these various sound modalities can, of course, be combined into chanting with music or chanting with binaural beats or rhythms and various forms of other music. So those are some of the major variables in the dashboard of the Citrine Salt Sanctuary. And then finally, I would just like to spend a few minutes talking about how I am asking my clients to prepare for their session with me in the Salt Sanctuary. And I am sending this out as I've actually got it posted on my website as a page, and I'm happy to share this with you. But the short story is, I really want my clients to be prepared for an optimal experience. And toward that end, the first thing I ask them to do at least a week before our session, is to develop and identify and develop a focus and an intention of one thing that they would really like to accomplish as a result of their session with me. And it may be something as simple as just learning more about the Salt Sanctuary. It doesn't have to be any grand objective. Or it could be a health issue. It could be that someone's in pain, or that they want to lose weight, or they've got a skin issue, or they have headaches. I mean, the entire spectrum of health issues are certainly legitimate goals to have in approaching this experience in the Salt Sanctuary. It could be something creative. It could be that someone's about ready to enter a new chapter in their life, or start a new job, or enter into a new relationship, or write a book, or anything that involves outward movement in their life and transitional movement in their life. They can bring that as an intention and be seeking more clarity or more energy or guidance in that direction. On a more mundane level, I'm asking people to be sure for a week before they enter the session to take trace minerals once a day, or throughout the day actually, but to take at least 40 drops of concentrate trace minerals, so that I know that their biofield is optimally and energetically active, which is what happens with trace minerals, which is often missing from our diets. I also ask them to ground their bodies to the earth at least 30 minutes a day, and that can be done either by walking on a wet beach, or walking in wet grass, or attaching a wrist strap or a grounding foot pad to themselves while they're going about their daily lives. So those are 3 preparatory instructions that I give my clients before a session. And then on the day of the session, I ask them to follow the following protocols. And one is that I'd like them to be well hydrated. I want them to be sure that they've had plenty of fluids and that their cells and their biofield are not desiccated. I want there to be a lot of abundant fluids and air and perspiration and blood and lymphatic tissue, all of which are sufficiently hydrated that they can transmit and receive energy and information. I generally ask people to avoid solid food for about a half an hour before the session, just so that their digestive system isn't dominating the energy in the session. I ask people to abstain from wearing oil-based lotions or creams in order to make sure that the transmission of energy can occur without being insulated, because oils and creams are insulators. They tend to stop the flow of energy. I ask people not to wear any metal, be it jewelry or clothing or underwires or belt buckles or zippers. Try to minimize that, if not completely eliminate it, as much as possible. And that's again in keeping with just wanting to have as clean an energy environment as possible. I ask people to wear comfortable clothing that's not too bulky, just for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that in doing the full body scan, it's nice not to have any interference with bulky clothing. So form-fitting, comfortable clothing is preferred. I ask people to come knowing their weight and their height and their age, and to be prepared to give me a little brief overview of any relevant health history. I ask them to let me know in advance if they are either pregnant or are not sure but might be pregnant, whether they have any electrical medical implant devices like pacemakers or metal bone replacements such as hips or femurs, titanium rods in their legs, for example, and also whether people are energetically or electrically sensitive by virtue of their history, where they know that they have a real issue with energy or electronics. That's often very relevant. And the last thing I ask people to do is just read a few pages on my website that have to do with the biofield, with my services, and to also read the page that I've written about the salt sanctuary. So that's really the bulk of this video. And again, I have a pamphlet that mirrors this video, and you're welcome to it. I'm happy to email it to you, as well as I would encourage you to, if you haven't already seen the 12.5-minute video of the biofield on my website, to please look at that. And otherwise, please feel free to contact me. This is a work in progress. The work on optimizing the Citrine Salt Sanctuary is nowhere near complete, but I think it's reached a stage now where I feel comfortable sharing it with you as my colleagues, and I'm hoping that together we can come up with all sorts of interesting questions to ask about how the Citrine Salt Sanctuary can be even more effective in our practices, and what kinds of experiments and questions we might want to ask that would be relevant to your own particular practice. And I'm happy, as you know, to chat with you about that anytime. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.